Welcome to the Mrs. R Relevant Daily Draft Podcast, joined with two of the OGs, Owen and Newt. It is good to see both of you. I know we had some, let's say, diverging podcasts last week. It's good to be back together this week. Newt, what is the good word for you here on Wednesday night?
Not much. I guess I'll do a little glow. I'm still coaching soccer because our boys are heading to state. So little praise there to the Homestead soccer team out in Wisconsin. Love to see that. But I am ready to be able to kind of focus in on this a little bit more. First couple weeks have just kind of scratched that itch that I've had as college football has really started to get into, the meat and potatoes of the game. So loving being back with this, loving being able to talk about these prospects. Hopefully me and Owen have a little bit of diversity this week. Week one, it was just so awful, agreeing so damn much. So we'll see what happens this week.
Well, Owen was telling me that the reason that you're agreeing more is that you've learned how to evaluate players now from him.
Newt finally learned how to do his job, so he's actually staying eye to eye with me.
I'm just throwing people under the bus. Owen, you're podcasting on back-to-back nights, so you're pulling double duty, but it is good to see you. What did you think of this defensive line group that we have today?
Some ups and downs. There's obviously some bigger names in here, and obviously one of my favorites from our last year's cycle that I get to talk about again today. So I definitely had some fun watching and getting some refamiliarizing. But in general, I think this class or this group we've got right here is probably going to be emblematic of a lot of the conversations we're going to have for D-line class as a whole this year. There's definitely some guys, some niche specific dudes, guys on the lower end of the spectrum that you're going to be like, oh, they're rosterable, but I don't know if they're like Final 53 type caliber. And then there's guys who are like, okay, I'm willing to take a day two swing on some of these players. So this will be kind of a good summation of the class as a whole as we get through this.
Yeah, and Newt and I were talking backstage while we were waiting for you to come on, and I think finding day two defensive tackles in this class is going to be a fun discussion because I think that's where we're going to see variation is which defensive tackles do people have graded, let's say, at the back of day two in their top 100. So that's part of what I'm here for, right? Like I am definitely interested. So this is the group that we have, right? I know that we've gone back and forth on which 8 are we covering tonight. Bear Alexander from Oregon, DeMonte Capehart from Clemson, Ahmad Moten from Miami, CJ Fight from Arizona State, Derek Moore from Michigan, Clev Lubin from Louisville, Akeem Mesidor from Miami, and then we're going to close the show out with Joshua Joseph from Tennessee. Newt, Bear Alexander, what do you think?
So, generally speaking, I try to not shit on guys, especially when I don't know them. And I preface with that because I do want to mention a little bit of background for Bear Alexander. So going into the summer scouting, I didn't even look at him because there was so many effort concerns surrounding him and kind of his track record. So he started off at the University of Georgia. He was a really highly touted recruit, 4-star recruit. He spent one season there and then he left for USC. Had a decent season at USC in his sophomore year, or maybe his redshirt freshman year, I guess. Not quite sure where that fell with a redshirt, but he actually ended up getting a all Pac-12 honorable mention in the last year of the Pac-12. And then last year, he kind of took a voluntary redshirt. He basically was in there for about 3 games, was not happy with his role, was not happy with his playing time, and that he kind of said, okay, well, I'm not going to play anymore, and planned on hitting the portal to where we found him now at Oregon. So he's a player that I think he's got a lot of baggage, and ultimately I came into his scouting with, I don't want to say a sour attitude, but kind of actually a little bit of apprehension. I will say, taking a look at his film at Oregon this year, has done a lot to bandage the fears I had about him. I've heard nothing but good things about him at Oregon, which you love to see kind of in a bounce back. And I think he's had a pretty damn good season as a interior defensive lineman. He's generating pressure in pass rush. I'm not saying he's, going to go out there and completely tear apart the pass game, but he's generating enough where I feel comfortable having him on passing downs. He's doing enough to get after the quarterback, but he's going to make his bread and butter in the run game. He is so explosive off the line for 300 pounds. He comes in and he's able to blow up run games because of his ability to slip interior offensive linemen. The way that he is able to use his body, his mass, his frame, all of it working really, really well for him, allows him to stay put in space and not get pushed off his spot, even in a double team. It allows him to stack and shed really well and be a really effective and disruptive interior defensive lineman. He's like I said, he's got the juice in pass rush. I think there's a lot there. He's doing enough where I feel comfortable with him. There are some things he's got to continue to grow upon. I think that kind of disrupted history of him not getting actual game time over the last 3 years isn't helping him any with that. So I think that throughout this season, if he can continue to grow and just show the ability to learn and become more than just an athletic player at his size, if he can show some technique, I'd really, really like to see that. There are times where he can get washed off in his pass rush when his initial burst doesn't work. It seems like he kind of gets stymied a little bit. And then I still, as much as I've really liked how he's approached this season, I still need to see that continued effort out of him. This is going to be, if he decides to declare a really important draft cycle for him, I want to see him at the All-Star games and really putting in the efforts to work his way through those. If he gets an opportunity to go as a redshirt junior, I want to see him really apply himself at the combine and kind of come back with the glowing remarks, because he's got a little bit of that past that he's got to work to kind of fight his way out of. Right now, I've got him as a very fringe day 2, day 3 guy. He's like right on the cusp for me, but I got to easily see him as a top 100 player if he continues to be effective as a run-stuffing defensive lineman, and then also show some of that juice and some of that pop, and given the potential that he has as a 3-down total lineman.
Okay, so what do you think?
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with how you introed it, where you're talking about his experience, jumping from school to school, especially with kind of electing to take himself out of USC. And it reminded me a lot of Jaheim Otis with Alabama, who also in this year's class, where he also was looking to transfer out of kind of the blue blood type of school, Georgia for Bear Alexander, Alabama for Otis. And for me, it comes to that I come into a little bit of bias when I know that coming into the film, because I'm like, okay, you're supposed to be this dude highly recruited to these high-level schools, and your complaint is you don't have enough playing time. So now you're supposed to go into these other schools at these other levels. You should be dominating. And at USC, he did play well, but his film at Oregon, I think my favorite part of it is he opens up that conversation about when you talk about core strength with defensive tackles, especially when guys who aren't those 320, 330-pound dudes who could eat up double teams when it's straight up coming at you, you're the nose tech or the one tech. But for Bear Alexander, he has enough weight in his lower half and ability to move that when you're going against a team that's going to try to run these outside zones and double through you to get through you to the linebacker, you're not going to get displaced, and you can continue to reset that line of scrimmage and maintain control of your gap while moving laterally and while having an offensive lineman getting his hands on you, because those zone blocking offensive linemen, sometimes they're in the 290, 295-pound range, especially some of those interior guys. And if you can hold your ground with them, then you'll be able to attack that and get off. So there's always room for those guys to exist in the NFL. I was a little disappointed with his pass rush because he was so twitchy and so explosive, getting off and shooting gaps against the run. Like, he made some big tackles for loss, and you're like, okay, this dude's making some impact plays. Can he come up and show that off in pass rushing? And, well, His hands were active at times. He flashed some good pass rush moves. I felt like his aggressiveness and ability to utilize and weaponize that explosiveness just wasn't to the level I was hoping for as a pass rusher. So if he can continue to put that together, similar to what Newt said, going to the All-Star circuit is going to be very important for him, not only for the interview cycle to kind of figure out where he's at maturity-wise and what happened with his kind of career progress, because, like, we have to always remember, and maybe it's just me just because I've gone through this life cycle thing as a 24-year-old who's now just trying to figure out graduating college and figure out what his life's supposed to be, and I'm not even a professional athlete. These guys are 20, 21, 22. They're trying to do what's best for them and trying to figure out, like, what they want in life and stuff like that. So a lot of these times you got to go and figure out, like, what's this guy's maturity level? Has he maybe he made some poor decisions or hasn't done that same career path you'd like, but has he grown into himself now that he's in Oregon? And then also now you're in those all-star circuits, you can go against other players. You have the one-on-one pass rush stuff. You have different coaches getting their hands on you. Can you then improve in those areas and continue to show that, like, okay, this is why I was so highly recruited. I've got it all figured out mentally now. I've got the physical tools, and now you can draft me and to unlock more of the other stuff. So I have him as a higher day 3 grade. I think he's a guy that I'm excited if I'm going to be a D-line coach to paying the table for and bring him in, especially if I don't need like an instant starter. If I'm looking for more of a developmental prospect, I'm looking to bring him in and be like, okay, this is a guy that I can really get my hands on and work with here.
Hey,
so Owen, I'm 52 years old and I'm still trying to figure out what I'm going to do when I grow up. So,
hey, Owen, when you were at Buffalo and you were taking a look at prospects, how much of a conversation did it come up in terms of like effort and character concerns that you'd have with guys that you're looking at through the transfer portal?
So there was actually quite a bit. Now Buffalo is a bit unique because they have some imposed or self-imposed stuff with their GPA and grade level stuff. So you have to also make sure that their GPAs are not going to tank the team's level or anything like that. But when it comes to like attitude, especially with the new regime that came in that I was working under, there were a couple players that we were excited about with their talent, but then once we found out the kind of player they were, kind of person they were, they definitely fell off our board and they fell lower down on who we want to get. I can't remember who it was. There was a wide receiver that like, who's the really famous like UConn football coach that was there for a while there up until recently. There was, or I think it was UConn or so, one of the other like one of those more like kind of more basketball school. But there was a famous coach that was there, and it was a wide receiver we're looking at, and I think he fought his own head coach like on the sideline, like threw punches at him. We're like, yeah, this dude's a stud. We'd love to have him, but we're not gonna bring him in because he fought this head coach during the middle of the game. So a lot of that stuff, depending on the program, depending on what they really value, they'll look for that. I'm not sure how it is with the P4 stuff, but I definitely know that like when you're at the MAC level and you're looking for players who are good, but also you have to make sure you have that good culture there because that's going to be real important because a lot of your guys aren't going to the league. You still want to make a good cohesive unit. You can't just get the best athletes and hope it works out. That's definitely more important, especially at those lower levels.
Okay, so, and the next player, DeMonte Capehart from Clemson. I know we covered him last year, probably one of the first shows you and Newt did. Where are you and DeMonte Capehart now?
I'd have to go back and check this, but this may be the first player that Newt and I ever disagreed on because I am a massive DeMonte Capehart fan. Let's see if we can keep that train rolling because he's the guy. We were just talking about Bear Alexander, has that core strength ability, even though he's just barely north of 300 pounds. But because he can move, he can really hold up against those double teams and against zone stuff. Capehart, on the other hand, 315. He's a very cut, lean 315. He's all muscle.
He's a good side, yeah.
He's one of those guys that you're going to ask if he can anchor. He can anchor against double teams in the power game. When they're looking to reach him, he can get his hands on and reset the line of scrimmage. He's a dude who's going to play with a ton of power, core strength. You line up, you're that guard or center. You're in for a day when you draw his assignment. That you're going to be trying to work through him. He just throws 300-pound men around like it's his job. Like he's just doing it for fun. And even in some of the games where he's going against some smaller D linemen, he can let loose some of that athleticism too. He has some of that flashes. I think it was the Pitt game or maybe not the Pitt game. I'm trying to remember which game I watched super recently. That he was really flying around and making more plays in space. That was one of the concerns I had was, yes, he's this big, lumbering one tech guy. Maybe he's going to be typecast as like this nose tackle type player. But for me, and what I've always kind of been consistent with on him is that I felt like he had a good enough athletic profile that there is some more upside outside of your typical nose tackles that just play the run. He can stack, shed. You're going to get a really good run defender immediately. And for me, he's a guy that's going to be able to come in and play better with a higher athletic ceiling than some of these other guys that you're just drafting in the later day 3 rounds to just come in and be that like stereotypical stack, shed, run defense. It was the Georgia Tech game I watched. I was really impressed with how well he was able to combine kind of that power and movement, especially against a center that I think I texted Juju randomly one day. I was watching a D tackle, I believe, for our first episode. And I was like, who is this Georgia Tech center? He's going to be good whenever he is draft eligible. Yeah. And then I would then watch DeMonte Capehart absolutely manhandle him for the entire game. And I'm like, wow, I don't know if I was just too quick to really like that center or if Capehart is just really still my dude. But yeah, I'm really high on him. I think he's a good run defender immediately coming into the league. And he's got some of that athletic ability, length, stuff that you can't really teach and is more rare in these stereotypical nose tackles that teams are going to really covet.
So I'm just looking right now. Sorry, I had one of the stats off the screen. What was your grade? Like, what would you give him for a grade?
So I have him with a round 3 grade.
Okay. I don't know if I changed a single word in my scouting report of DeMonte Capehart from last year to this year. I changed. This is what I changed. I changed it from older prospect 5th year of college football to older prospect 6th year of college football. That was probably the one thing I changed. I just didn't see it in terms of the potential as a pass rusher. I will say I think the description of his frame and his build is spot on. Like, he's a cut 315, and you can kind of see it looking at him. You're like, that dude's 315, then he's going to be a dense dude. And I believe it. You see that power and you see some of those elements. Problem is, I just don't think it translates to his game as much as I want it to. I think the benefit of him coming back for his 6th year was the ability to continue to grow and be more than just a run stuffer, to start to use some of that and be an impact player on pass rush. And what I was just looking up, because my stats on my spreadsheet are a little outdated. On my spreadsheet, his true pass rush win percentage is 0%. On PFF now updated, it's like, I don't know, 4.9%. So it's actually not awful. But it's still one of those things where I'm like, I needed this dude to show me more. He really didn't take that step forward for me. I have a tough time getting behind a guy that is, for me, a above average run defender, but just really hasn't been able to put it together as a pass rusher. I see the explosive first step. For me, I don't know how much more he's going to be able to give and offer in terms of that pass rush ability. And when I see that kind of like capped ceiling and a middling run defender, it just drives him down my list a little bit. So I think very well said. Definitely the first guy that we're going to disagree on here, because I got a late day 3 grade on DeMonte Capehart.
Wow. That low, huh? What games did you end up watching, dude? Because I watched all the games from last year.
I watched the Georgia Tech game. And I watched LSU.
For me, so with the pass rush stuff, I definitely agree. There is little to no, like, right now floor with that. Like, looking at his PFF stats, in this year, he has a 4.3% pass rush win percentage. Last year was 5.5. 2 years ago, all the way up at 12.9. And like you mentioned, back when he was still playing in 2020, he was at a 55.6, which it was like.
That's because they put him in. It's like the 3rd string interior offensive lineman, and he said, "Get out of my way, child."
Yeah, it was 9 pass rush snaps. But yeah, this year on 138, which is the most pass rush snaps he's had his entire career, he's at 4.3%. Definitely not a guy you're drafting specifically to be a pass rush. He is a very limited player when it comes to what you're going to be asking him to do for you. For me, it becomes down to he has the build, he has some juice. It's not like I'm gonna say a name, and it's like I'll call him the Walmart version of this from last year. I'm not saying he's anywhere similar to this, but like with Alfred Collins from last year, where Alfred Collins was this
that's
big,
disrespectful to Alfred Collins, man.
Whoa, he's like this big, lengthy dude who, while Alfred Collins had some special athleticism for that size, he was another guy where like, okay, he's raw with his pass rush hands. He wins against the run. And for me, Capehart has length, has the power, and he doesn't have, the greatest get off or the greatest movement ability, but he's able to stack, shed, get off, and still keep his head above water when they are trying to reach him on zone plays. So for me, I think I'm just giving him more credit as a run defender than maybe you are. I'm still pretty low on him as a pass rusher, but there's some elements of his game, especially with that length, with some of his movement ability, his natural strength, that I'm like, okay, if I like sat him down and tried to like figure out like what one or two moves we can get you to do, that if you get stuck out there on a third down and no huddle, you can really throw out there and maybe compress the pocket a little bit.
So, where does Capehart compare with Darrell Jackson Jr. from Florida State for you?
So Darrell Jackson Jr. I have slightly higher than Capehart. They're both in a similar mold because I think as players, they have similar things that are good, except I think Jackson Jr. is a little bit better because he's also, dude, kind of rocked up, long, can take on blockers, and is a good run defender. But I think his run defense is definitely worse than Capehart's because he plays a lot taller. He is 330 pounds, but he's not able to anchor as good as like a Capehart is. He has like the same physical tools, but he isn't able to weaponize them against the run as much. But he does have that pass rush upside that Capehart doesn't have. He did show that he can get after the quarterback and can attack blockers a bit as a pass rusher, where Capehart hasn't been able to show that. So for me, they're very similar graded, but it's just because Jackson's giving up in the run defense department and gaining in the pass rush, whereas Capehart is all run defense all the time. And it's just a guy that, like, if I'm drafting someone, if I have a problem defending the run in the center of my defense and I run a one tech, I'm drafting Capehart. I'm not worried about having to go in and put any more investments outside of that. I'm going to bank on that being the guy that comes in and kind of adds that element to my room that I really need.
I think here's my only issue with Capehart and, talking about him. And once again, I think that the piece is going to be the biggest piece is a run defense, I think. But if you take Clemson's 4 best defensive linemen, you're going to probably put out there, and maybe it's more like a 3-4, whatever, like Will Help, TJ Parker rushing. And I don't know if you've heard of this guy named Peter Woods. I think he's pretty good. And then Capehart's the 4th guy. That means that, like, dude, you just got to, like, be semi-competent because there's, like, 3 pass rushing studs in front of you. And I think that's probably the part that scares me a little bit more is it's not like he's being asked to be like the dude and he's just not delivering. He's being asked to be the 4th dude. And it's still like, I'm not really sure what we got going on here. I think here's the part that pissed me off the most, actually. If you've ever checked out Clemson's like their football page and pulled up DeMonte Capehart's profile, there is a clip on there of him blowing up a UNC interior offensive lineman. I mean, like, you could put it as a highlight play for NCAA football, and it'd be like the greatest thing in the world. I've just never seen it on film. And I think that's part of it is, and truth be told, I might be a little bit harder on him in run defense than I should be. Because I want to see that much more because of what Owen described with the frame. And like he's got a decent first step and he's like got a lot of core strength. I think it's just all a little bit underwhelming, and I might be a little harder on him for that. But alas, we finally had our first big disagreement.
Green Bay Packer pick 63 right there, Nate.
You stop it right now, Jim. You do not even say that.
Do I need to send a DeMonte Capehart jersey in the mail next April?
Yeah, and then hopefully he changes number again right after you.
Yeah.
Dude, that's a collector item right now. I don't even care what you guys say. The Matthew Golden 22 jersey, I'm so glad it was that jersey, not the 0.
It looks so. I didn't like 22 as a wide receiver initially, but after looking at him on 0, I don't know. It just doesn't fit him as well. I think he looks better at 22.
The 22 is awesome. I love it.
Okay, so a draft professor special here. So shout out to Randall Slifer. Randall, when doing all of his summer scouting, pointed out Ahmad Moten. He wasn't on any lists, right? So with all the different people that send me player boards, Randall Slifer is the first one to mention Ahmad Moten from Miami. We have podcasted on him before. I believe Drew covered him on a Sunday. But Newt, I saw you tweet about Moten. What did you think?
So just to kind of like go through the pieces for him, he's going to be another guy. I think he's got to do a little bit more to be disruptive in the pass game. He had 0 sacks thus far. Generates a fair amount of pressures though. So one of the biggest negatives I have written down for him is he needs to convert wins into sacks. Like it just has to happen, because I think in watching in some of those games, like I checked out the Louisville game, and for as bad as Miami looked, I think there were some bright spots, especially for Moten. And there was one play where he absolutely disrupted the hell out of the throw from, God, that would be, who's the quarterback in Louisville? Miller Moss. And it was just like, this is what you want. But he's got to get home, in my opinion. And that's going to be one of the biggest things that I am harping on him for is, hey, can we continue to finish this? I think his hands are a little inconsistent. I think that's part of just his inability to get a clean rush at the quarterback and actually have a true opportunity. You know, not every pressure is built the same. So I think that there are some elements that play a role in there. And then, as maybe everyone or maybe no one knows at this point, I'm really a big stickler for missed tackle rate. And Ahmad Moten is atrocious. It's like 27%, like he's rivaling Derek Harmon last year. So that's never territory you want to be in. But those are the negatives I have written down. I think if you take a look at him, 6'3", that 324 pounds, I like that. I think it makes a really versatile player, and I think he wears that weight really, really well. The first step at that weight, I think, is phenomenal. Like, he explodes off the line. He uses that to quickly get to the shoulder of the interior offensive lineman. And I think one of the ways that he's able to generate those pressures is he's getting an interior offensive lineman away from their gap that they are like trying to stay within, and forcing a quarterback, you know, this way or that way, in retrospect to the pocket. The mass and the movement is going to be, in my opinion, one of the best ways. So, you know, he pairs that and he takes and he puts it with really active hands, inconsistent, but active hands. And so you talk about that willingness and, hey, can we get you to kind of refine your technique? And I really think he does have that ability. He shows it in run defense with the ability to stack and shed really well. And I think it's there in pass rush. He just has to get a little bit better with his hand placement. And I think he shows that promise. I think for me, if we're kind of making comparisons, he's really what I wanted DeMonte Capehart to be. He is a stout interior run defender that has some juice, and at his size does show the ability to maybe be a little bit more of a pass rusher. The thing is, he's just 2 years younger, and in my opinion, his pass rush game is already a little bit further along than DeMonte Capehart's.
Yeah, I agree with what you said, especially with his first step. The fact that he's 324 and has the first step that he does, I think is really impressive, and it shows up in that run defense. I don't think he's like – I came away not loving his run defense as much as you did, Newt, just because I feel like there's a lot of plays where I was looking for him to use those hands a lot more, stack, shed, get off. He's definitely a guy that's going to – he wins a lot with his athleticism. I think that's what really impacts his run or his missed tackle rate a lot. Derek Harmon, I felt like it was just because he was playing out on the edge last year and for Oregon, and that was kind of where he was playing in too much space, which caused him to have those missed tackles. For me, with Moten, I think it's just that he just plays a little bit out of control because he is such a good athlete at that level. And that kind of parlays over to his pass rushing. I was watching Jerry Ostrowski. I do podcasts with him on Tuesday nights talking about the offensive line. He was watching the Buffalo Bills, Carolina Panthers All-22 film live in a Discord, and I was watching him talk about Deion Walker. And Deion Walker last year, super big, rare athlete of a player, but kind of raw when it came to not knowing what to do with his hands. And he said this when watching him rush the passer against Carolina was that he called him a yard sale. Just throw shit at the wall and see what sticks. His hands are moving a mile a minute. If something works, it'll work because he knows that he's got to get off. He's got the movement. He's not going to get moved off the spot. He's just twirling his hands around, trying to find a way to get a good strike to land and then get off. If you can refine that a bit more, I think it's the same with Moton. If you can refine what he's doing, what his attack plan is going into that rep, he can be a lot better of a successful pass rusher because he has a ton of pressures. He has a ton of wins against offensive linemen on tape because he's so twitchy, because he has that size. He translates that speed to power really well, can beat guys and put them on the back foot. It's just now, can you really polish it up and have some hand moves, some go-to moves to finish off those reps, as opposed to getting these guys in the back foot and then they're still getting hands on you, and you already beat him on the rep. You won the rep, but he has just enough of time to get hands on you to slow you down that you can't finish those out. So if he can polish it up a bit more, I do think he can translate that to more sacks. But yeah, I'm definitely a fan of Moton, especially for a guy who has that size and still has that level of twitchy athleticism to his game.
No, I think you said that really well.
Have Moton day 2. Newt, is your grade day 2?
Yeah, it's late day 2, but I've got him with a 3rd round grade.
Same.
Yeah. Okay. It's getting to the point where I can almost hear how you're talking about the player and see how you have him graded. So, CJ Fight from Arizona State, 6'2", 305. Owen, what did you think?
So this is a player, and we'll talk about another one next week. I was telling the guys in the pre-show that I actually, on accident, did some extra study homework for next week's show. So I'll be ready to go for that week's. Don't you worry. But between this player and another one for next week's, this is a kind of type of player that I kind of categorize as I'm not in love with the skill set entirely personally, but he's a guy that I will put on my roster, and he'll be a player that, fans will fall in love with. He's got that attitude, that mindset where, like, okay, I can watch this guy play football and be happy and root for him to make my team. But for me, with Fight, it's a lot of some limitations that I didn't really love. He's got a good anchor. Kind of similar to talk about Bear Alexander earlier. When he's moving laterally side to side, he's 305, but he has enough lateral mobility and then having that mass that he's not going to get pushed off his base when he's getting double teamed moving laterally. He can split those guys, not get moved off, or keep that line of scrimmage where it needs to be while getting flat and chasing plays from either the front side or back side on stretch plays. So I do think he has a role there as like a gap-filling run defender at nose tackle because he's able to hold up that point of attack pretty well, despite being, a little undersized, 6'2", doesn't have a ton of length, right? Isn't going to be a guy that you're trusting a lot to stack shed, be a dominant run defender type player. And I just didn't love that level of extension. So if he was there to make plays, but oftentimes he just couldn't finish. You want to talk about missed tackle rate or missed tackles. CJ Fight has some ugly ones on film there, especially. And I think that shows up a lot too with just the fact that he was excelling a lot in those opportunities where he was playing in space, filling those gaps. And then when the time is to make the play, when the guy cuts back into you, you're now in a lot more space than you're used to as a tackle. And then that's where you can see him kind of be a little bit out of his depth and make some poor missed tackles. In general, I just didn't really love a lot of the other stuff outside of that, like pass rushing. He had some plays where he was able to get free. He's run through a lot of high effort plays, and then I just didn't really see a lot of that extra twitch to get through and make the play and finish those plays up. So I think I specifically mentioned here he's a space eater who's in areas to make plays because he's always doing the right thing, but he just struggles with finishing, whether it's an athletic issue or a length issue or any of those kind of combination of things.
Yeah, I think you nailed it. Just to kind of elaborate on some of the positives that you gave him, the frame that he's got at 6'2", 305, he's built like a tree trunk. He is wide. Like, he has probably got some of the broadest shoulders of a defensive tackle that I've seen in this class. And, that's going to be obviously really good for him when he's trying to eat up some of that space. But his ability to, and I don't know if it's as much his, like when you talk about him tackling, and really having some ugly misses. I think he just loses the ball carrier, because there have been times where I've seen him locked up with a guard and the running back just slips right by him. And it's not until he's 5 yards down the field that Fight looks up and he's like, what just happened? So I think he's just a hair late to a lot of things. And there's not necessarily as much of that excitement that you have around his potential for pass rush. We're kind of going back and forth over some of the last guys. And with Fight, I think you see a lot of opportunities over his first 3 years at college. He's taken 1,200 snaps. He has a total of just over 20 pressures in those 3 seasons. So it's something where it has improved from his freshman year to now, but it's still not anything that glows. And I think he doesn't really have the body type in order to be able to be effective in that. I think he's a little bit, because he's a little more squat built, I think his movement just isn't as effective as it could be. So yeah, I was probably around the same spot that you were with him. I had a late day 3 grade on CJ Fight.
So, Newt, who do you like better, Capehart or Fight?
I like Capehart better than Fight.
Okay. And
did you find that hard to believe, Owen? I like
do.
Capehart better than someone?
I think you just hate Capehart and you think he's undraftable and that he's just this old man who needs a walker when he's on the field because he's played football for 6 years,
I mean, he does. He probably has like an embroidered cane that says "Go Clemson" because he's been there forever.
And it goes with his AARP card too.
Okay, flipping to some edges now. Newt, what did you have on Derek Moore from Michigan?
So the wild thing about Derek Moore is, I swear to God that TJ Guy and Derek Moore just they just shifted bodies. And my feelings about TJ Guy going in this season, we already got a chance to talk about. I was a little disappointed this season. Derek Moore, I was really not that high on over summer scouting. I thought that the hype around him was a little unwarranted, and he was like kind of a DPR, didn't really play the run game all that well. And then I got a chance to throw on some tape from Nebraska and Washington this year. And holy shit, was I really, really impressed. I thought that he looked like a completely different player to me. And this is a guy that, I had him well outside my top 10 when I probably only watched like 15 guys for summer scouting. And he's now back in my top 10 with a handful of those guys that I still have to rewatch and have the ability to, move up or down. The biggest thing about him that's going to stand out is his pass rush ability. He is so incredibly explosive off the line. I think his build is going to be a huge benefactor of that. He's got almost 34-inch arms. He's 6'3", 260 pounds. It's one of those things when you're looking for a quick twitch, explosive athlete off the line, and you can get him at that size with that length, you'll take that any day of the week. So I think that everything with his build, the athleticism, and all those things that start to go together are really, really working in his favor. And then the other thing, and we've talked about this throughout the course of last draft cycle and this one, if you have a high motor, you're going to win my heart immediately. And I don't think I saw it last year. And in those 2 games that I watched this year, I really started to see Derek Moore as kind of this player that is playing with his heart on his sleeve. It seemed like every single game he was just looking to see how much he could wear down an offensive tackle and then use that to his advantage. And it was almost felt like he kind of like had a new love for the game. With that, additionally, he's got a really high IQ. He understands how to manipulate tendencies. I tweeted out a couple clips of him, bursting off and being able to corner and win that way, but also then having a really good counter step inside. And so I think that, he pairs athleticism. He takes and he puts that with a motor and an IQ. That is something that, you don't see that combination from every single edge rusher. And when you see it coming together, it is a really, really pretty thing. Is he the most twitched up of athletes? No. Does he have the best pass rush? No, I think he still has to continue to improve his pass rush. In fact, I really docked him on his I'm not pass rush. I apologize. Run defense. Does he have a good run defense? No, I docked him on that. He's got to continue to get better in run defense. In my opinion, he's getting better, but he needs to do a better job setting the edge. I think he lacks a little bit of a power profile. He's got the ability to convert speed to power, but he doesn't really have, a true bull rush or I'm going to move through you. And I think that's apparent when you look at his ability to set the edge. But when you talk about a guy that has the juice, has the chops, has the build, Derek Moore is really, really impressed me this year. And I've become a pretty damn big fan of him. So he comes in with a pretty strong round 3 grade for me. If not like kind of pushing a round 2 grade.
Yeah, I was actually one of the Derek Moore truthers. I was high on both the Michigan pass rushers this past summer. And unlike TJ Guy, I've kind of stuck around with where I was on with Derek Moore, which is unfortunate because Derek Moore was not the one I was pining for the most after last year. I don't know what's going on with TJ Guy, but regardless, Derek Moore, I was one of the people who thought maybe that I really did like the pass rush profile coming into this season. Yes, like the speed to power wasn't super consistent, but when he strikes his hands inside and he was able to actually land his move there, he was burying dudes. Like the power was in his frame. It's just more so him playing with consistency. And what kind of makes it maddening watching him as a run defender because you're like, I know you have the ability to set these hard edges. I've seen you throw around Caden Proctor. Like I need you to like utilize that in reps consistently when it comes to not just straight up, pin your ears back and rush the passer. So I think he's got the ability to corner, attack the outside hip, lean into guys and condense that angle, attack with speed, has the inside counter step, has some speed to power, has a bunch of ways to win as a pass rusher that I really do think is going to be highly valued and where I really kind of saw him. And I haven't moved off of where I thought about that coming into the season. It's more so his grade has stayed pretty consistent for me because the run defense was when I was like, okay, I'm banking on this maybe getting a little bit better. And it really just didn't. And it makes me a little bit concerned about where his fit is schematically in the NFL because if you're going to be in an even front, you have to be on an even front team that flips your edges so that way he's your weak side edge. Because if he's attacking from the backside, getting flat, scraping from behind, I think he has enough movement ability to make those plays count. But if he's like a 3-4 outside linebacker, same thing. Flip him to the side away from the strength, down asking him to take on tight ends and stack and shed. But if you're looking for a guy that is going to be able to rush the passer, and I prefer him to be in an even front, it's just going to be, is he going to be able to be out there in early downs? So because he has everything I'm looking for, he has the size, he has the pass rush, he has the athleticism. He's twitched up, but not super twitchy, but like he is twitched up. He has bend, but not the most bend. Like he is a good athlete, not elite. He's a good pass rusher, not elite, and he's just a bad run defender. So right now, he's a guy that if he's your edge 3, edge 4, especially as a rookie, I think you're happy with it. Does he have starter upside or like that's pushing it? I think you need to really see him develop that. But I do think he has a high enough floor that I'm willing to draft my day 2 to bolster an edge room that really needs like an extra body in there that can come in and play in some of those long and late or third down opportunities.
So both of you are day 2 on Derek Moore from Michigan.
Yep.
Okay, so this is Ryan Sparks' guy.
He's talking about him last week.
Yeah, Clev Lubin from Louisville. We've covered him. We've podcasted on him once on a different night. And what I heard, I'm like, okay, I want to hear what Owen and Newt have to say. Owen, where are you on Clev Lubin from Louisville?
Yeah, he's a fun watch, especially when you're watching him in games where he has where his pass rush is really clicking because he has a ton of length, and you're able to really see some fun reps where he's just flying off the ball, getting into guys, converting speed to power. I think he had like 2 sacks week 1 and 3 sacks week 2 against like Eastern Kentucky or in I think one of the MAC schools, I believe.
James Madison.
James Madison, there you go. And James Madison ranked higher than, if I'm not mistaken. Am I crazy? He was absolutely cooking those offensive tackles, putting them in a blender. He is the epitome of being able to convert that speed to power with his length, when he is on and clicking. I think he needs to improve some other counters there with it. He's a little bit of a one-note rusher for me right now, where his other moves, when he tries to do anything with them, they're not as dominant as when he's able to use that or just using his athleticism to outrun and free up gaps and shoot gaps to attack the quarterback. But he definitely has like that base of like, okay, he has some special plays on film. He has the athleticism to be able to get out and get after the quarterback. It's more so a ball of clay as a pass rusher that I'm going to try to add on and manipulate to fit to what I like to do as a defensive front and how I can utilize him a bit more. As a run defender, I felt like the length didn't show up as well in the run defense as it did in the pass rush. Being 250, again, another guy, we're just talking about Derek Moore at 260, not being able to really set the hard edge. You're going to have to find guys who are more rare with that when they're in those smaller kind of frame builds to try to set the hard edge and defend that run as a stack and shed head. So he's maybe going to profile more as like a 3-4 outside linebacker at this current weight class. I think for right now, you're drafting because you think you're going to get a guy that you can really pull that pass rushing profile out of. And if you can find the right way to deploy him, that you're not presenting him so prominently on rundowns, that I think that he will find a good pathway to the NFL. It's just more so, what do you value when it comes to floor? Because usually we talk about floor is he can defend the run and he's got some pass rush upside, or he's a DPR and he can get after the pass rusher and he's pretty polished with that. Right now, he doesn't really have either of those in like that I really love, but he has a ton of upside. So he's really kind of a boomer bust prospect for me when it comes to looking at that. So he's kind of a hard guy to give a solid grade on. I think with him being an edge rusher and having that position multiplier on him, he'll probably get into that day 2 conversation. But for me, I'm a little hesitant on that. I'd probably have to talk with my positional coaches and my GM, talk about where we're going with our defense and what his role would be there first before I could even move forward with looking at him any earlier than like round 4-ish.
Yeah. Now it's a guy that he's had an interesting collegiate career. So he started as a redshirt at Army for a year, and then he went to Iowa Western Community College. And I think I might be wrong, but I think he actually won like a JUCO championship. He was a JUCO All-American though, for sure. And then he went to Coastal Carolina, and now he's at Louisville. So he's been like boom, 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 boom. And I want to preface it with, we talked a little bit at the beginning about Barry Alexander and, some of the apprehension around him being at his third program. I think with Clev Lubin, he's probably making those transfers in terms of like what's best for him. So, you go from Army to Western Community College. I think he probably didn't find the right fit given where he was. He was a 0-star recruit, and he probably needed to be at a lower level of competition to start with to continue to get that playing time. Him not being on the field was not helping him in that situation. And then he transfers up, and now he transfers up again. So I think they're made for the right decision. And so it kind of creates this really unique player profile in terms of his background. But I think that, Owen, you hit the nail on the head in terms of where he's at. He's going to have like just a stupid high grade from PFF in terms of his pass rush. And it's going to be mostly because of the Eastern Kentucky or the James Madison game. I didn't watch either of those because I'm not going to watch Louisville play. No offense to Eastern Kentucky or James Madison fans, but I'm not going to watch them play non-Power 4 football when this is an ACC team that I can see play conference play week in and week out and get some of that high level competition. So I immediately went to go watch him play against Miami, and I did watch him play against Pitt because he had 7 pressures in that game. And I was like, all right, let's see where the juice is with this. But I think you said it really well. He's got to develop a counter. There is kind of this, really good athlete in there. But there's a lot of things that just he still hasn't developed. And you see that a little bit more with guys who have spent time at lower levels of competition and haven't really had an opportunity to get some of that elite coaching where they have, time with these guys that are able to, hey, this is, where you want to be in this situation when you're able to, dominate that outside shoulder and how you can develop a counter move. And, even the best pass rushers that we'll talk about in college football don't necessarily have a great pass rush plan and great hands. They're just freaky athletes. I think Lubin's a good athlete, but not a great one. And he's got to develop some of those skills. So for me, he comes in with an early day 3 grade. I think that I do like what he's able to do at his size with his run game. However, he's not going to be able to succeed at the NFL level doing that. And so whether it's adding mass or learning how to set a better edge, that's got to improve. And I think ultimately he's got to do more than just win off athleticism in terms of his pass rush.
Okay, so I think I heard draftable day 3, but and Owen, did you say day 3 pushing day 2?
I think in the right system, if you get him in a room and you're a team that knows how you're going to utilize him, knows what your plan for him is, I think you could see the highs, and you could definitely look at him as being like, if we have a late round 3 pick and we just want our selection of these edge rushers that we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks, I think this could be a guy that you could see a team taking a swing on there as opposed to waiting for round 3 for maybe some other guys that didn't have some of the juice or some of the intangibles that he's shown on tape already.
Yeah, and I had probably what would equate to a round 4, round 5 grade on him. So,
okay, so that player was removed. There we go. Akeem Mesidor from Miami. Owen, you're going to start this one because I know that whatever grade you have, I'm confident Newt's is going to be higher. Because we talked about this while we were waiting for you backstage, but
Owen's like joking on you. He's my top-rated player in this class.
Let me quickly just make some adjustments. Now look at that; he's number 1 on the big board. Got to one up Newt somehow. Akeem Mesidor, unfairly known as the other edge rusher at Miami opposite Rubin.
He is unfairly known as that. I always feel so bad tweeting about him, like the other edge rusher.
It's like, oh yeah, he's the other guy there, even though he's a stud, 6'3", 280, twitched up, has some pop in his hands, can really I love what Miami does. I don't know how they've lost the games they've lost this year with the amount of D tackle or D line talent they've had on that roster with Bain. We talked about Moton earlier, Mesidor now. And especially with how they utilize him, like they'll have him kick inside. I think it was the Notre Dame game where he was just absolutely cooking the guards in that game off the snap, able to get off, swim over them, and get some pressure up the middle and really attack that. So in both on the edge and up the middle, I think his twitch and his athleticism translates. He has enough power and enough strength to go through guys, through their chest, but also has some moves and some hand technique to get around them as a pass rusher. 280 as a run defender, it's hard to not be a guy that can set the edge against the run when you're that level of weight. And not only that, they have him dropping into coverage. Now, he's a good athlete. I don't think that's in his cards in the NFL. When he did drop into coverage and they targeted him, he looked a little fish out of water there. And this is actually, come to think about it, I was just trying to remember who that reminded me of. And it was back when Miami had Jalen Phillips, Greg Rousseau, and Quincy Roche. And they would drop Quincy Roche and Jalen Phillips into coverage all the time. And I remember watching them like, all right, these dudes are solid on the line of scrimmage, but please, for the love of God, stop dropping them into the flats there. They're looking like fools trying to tackle Travis Etienne in the flat. I'm like, why are you doing this? But so like if they want to, they hone it in. He's a versatile player, maybe not that versatile, but 280 can be inside, outside pass rusher, absolute stud. I do think that he's a guy that gets overshadowed, has some room to grow when it comes to developing a full-on pass rush plan. He relies a little bit too much on that athleticism, like we were talking about earlier, where it's like these guys are just freaks. They can get off and beat dudes off the snap. They don't have to worry about going against these. Like if you put him rushing from the inside against like a Quentin Nelson in the NFL, is he going to be able to do what he did against Notre Dame? Probably not. He's going to need to have a better way to win and tactically have an advantage there. But for right now, where he's at with his development, I think he is a strong edge player to be looking into, especially like early day 2, even sneaking in the back half of day 1, just because He's a guy that has the size, has the twitch. He's a player that teams will love. I don't know if I'm a team that needs an edge rusher. I don't know if I'm hammering the table for that specifically, because there's some elements of his game that I'm not totally in love with. I'm sure New will delve a bit more into a lot of the finer details, seeing as he's apparently the number one fan of the Mesidor Club there. But if a team, like we've seen crazier guys who've had that level of athleticism and size come in and be like, all right, cool, this is our guy. We're going to take a swing on him, especially when we have that we want to get to more depth across our defensive line entirely.
Okay, so before Newt, I'm going to set you up here, but we have covered Akeem Mesidor 3 times, right? There's 3 defensive line podcasts. This is the 3rd time he's been covered. Owen, I can guarantee right now you are the highest person I have heard on Akeem Mesidor.
I don't see how you couldn't be. He's just he's a guy that goes out there and just does everything.
Yep. So Newt, you got to one up Owen. Go.
What would your grade be? What would your grade be in Mesidor?
I have a round 2 grade on him, but if you took him back half of round 1, I wouldn't crucify.
Okay. So, Mesidor is, and for everyone that says like, oh, he's winning off Ruben Bain, he's winning off Moten, bullshit. He's winning off the fact that he is going to work his ass off harder than anyone else on that field. This guy, the minute that this, and I talked about it with Derek Moore, and I said, man, the motor on Derek Moore is phenomenal. Mesidor, it's like unmatched. Like you see this guy go down in and down out, and it is crazy what he is willing to do for that Miami defense. And just to like give a little bit of perspective on this, and you talk about work rate, and you can see it like for that the Florida State game. The Florida State game, Miami versus Florida State, he played 76 snaps as an edge rusher. He's not an offensive lineman. He played 76 snaps as an edge rusher. He has played over 50 snaps in 4 games this season as an edge rusher. He's going to be a guy that is going to work his ass off for you. You couple that with everything that Owen just said, in terms of the first step quickness, in terms of the hands that he brings to it, and then just the sheer overall size. When I watched him, I didn't see a guy that moved like he was 280 pounds, but I saw a guy that was able to set an edge like he was 280 pounds, that was able to at least show some juice in terms of his ability to be an effective run defender with some good coaching. You take all of those things and you really put them together, I think you've got a guy that with that athleticism, with that motor, with the hands, and with that pass rush plan that he's able to put into place, you've got a guy that's fringe first round. And ultimately, I think me and Owen are about the same spot with him. I have probably like a missed first round grade of about that much. And he's a guy that for me on my board, and it's very outdated right now. But like he's number 23 on my board right now. And I'm not going to, bat an eye at that at all if anyone takes a first round pick with him, because he is that good. I think he's going to warrant that first round pick. And I think you're going to see 2 Miami edge rushers going in the first round in this year's draft.
So question for you guys on that. Neither of you brought up his age, but he's probably going to be one of the old, like if he goes on day 2 or day 1, he will probably be one of the oldest players to go on day 1 or 2.
Yep.
Does that affect your eval at all? Like is his age built into the grade, or his age is independent of the grade?
Here's time for Mr. Consistency, Newt. With we covered Capehart earlier today. What are you going to say about Mesidor, Newt?
No, hold the phone. I got on Capehart for being an old ass man, because like you talk about his ceiling. Mesidor is like, what ceiling, bro? I'm here. I'm doing it. No, so for me, when I look at it, I'm not looking at a guy where I'm talking about the traits and the potential. I'm talking about a guy that's like doing it, and he's exhibiting those things that I want to see. I think it ultimately comes down to the team, and me being a Packer fan, There's going to be those thresholds you talk about, age being one of them. I think there are going to be some teams that the minute they see a 6-year senior coming out as an edge rusher in the first round, they're going to say, I don't know. He was already a first round fringe guy to us. We're going to pass on this, and we're going to go with a guy that is, maybe a little bit younger. So you take a look at a guy like, I know Price brought up Zion Young before. If you're weighing the difference between those two, they both have a lot that they offer in terms of both sides of the ball. Zion Young being 2 years younger, I like Mesidor better than Young, but maybe a team goes with Young because he does have that 2-year gap on him in terms of his age. For me, I like Mesidor better. I'm not building that into my grade, but if I'm doing like a mock draft or if I'm looking at teams, I think there are some that are going to definitely take that into consideration.
Predictively. Now, I was last year, I was big on I was on Darius Alexander train. I've never really been in the opinion of, guys, a 25-year-old rookie. He's still 25 years old. You see these edge rushers now, and now, yes, ignoring the injury history, which is kind of tough to ignore with that scenario. You got a guy who's a 25-year-old rookie, sure, but you still have, two contracts more. So you have the rookie contract, taking the 29, get him on another a 3 or 4 year deal, and then maybe a second contract after that if he's still, able to utilize that. And with the fact that he has the size he does, he's winning with a lot of athleticism right now, but he's going to be able to continue to grow into his strength profile, and you're going to be able to mold him to what he wants. You're telling me if a Kansas City or a Philadelphia or a Buffalo are picking at the end of the first round and they want to add a guy, this is the player profile they all look for. So you're looking at a guy who puts it on tape, has the profile they want, and while yes, he is on the older side of it, he's one of those last holdouts that are going to be on the older end, because even a Capehart with the 2020, we don't see a lot of these guys who are in those upper ranges of ages at this point. But like I said, I was in for it with Darius Alexander. The benefit of getting a guy who's at this age is what he is. You're drafting this guy to come in. If you need an edge too, to come in, be a run setter, or be a physical presence in the run, be a pass rushing off the edge, maybe kick inside and rush from the interior if you like to utilize that a bit more. I think you could look at him, and if he was, 2 years younger, I think he's a slam dunk first round pick. But the fact that he has that, predictably, probably not.
I want to point out, I think, was it not Anthony Russo that was pounding the Darius Alexander train last year? And he was, I think he was a conductor, wasn't he? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe Russo was just there, but it's just, you're talking about the same thing here. And Akeem Mesidor is doing it at a really high level. So I don't know, man. I like Mesidor a lot. I'm definitely, flirting with that first round grade for him.
So, yeah, I'm going to tell you right now, so the draft professors that have covered Mesidor, Drew Collings covered him, Dalton did, and Chris did. And then Newton Owen now. I can guarantee you the two of you are higher by probably 40 to 50 spots on your big board. So what was their criticism of him? Was it specifically the age thing, or did they have a problem with something with his game? So the age was definitely something that came up. Do you take a 25-year-old that early? The scouting report sounded the same.
Okay.
Right? I'm listening. It's just, how do you value it? Or either
that's fair. If it's how you value it, it's that's totally fair, because I think that this guy, the way that he plays the game is just, it's so much fun to watch.
Yep.
Every single down, you're seeing a guy basically flip a coin whether or not he's going to win that rep, and just cause havoc. He is so much fun to watch.
Yeah, at this point, I'm evaluating these guys, and what the grades I'm giving out to you are tape grades. What does their tape tell me their grade is? Is there, and I'll throw it in there. Oh, he's an edge rusher. He gets a position multiplier. That's what I'm saying. He could be a first round pick, because if he's playing that high value position and he plays it well, I don't have in those grades accounting for injury history or age, because there's a lot of times that's just a very subjective thing, whether or not they can get you. I'm not in there looking at the medical records. I can't tell you whether or not he's going to be able to recover or stay healthy past that. Maybe if he loses a little bit of weight, especially with the specific injuries he's had, it could be a situation where he's not putting as much pressure on his body, then he can hold up a bit more. I think getting to the NFL will probably help with that, with cutting down his body fat percentage and getting him to a better physical fitness point of view. But for me, I'm not gonna try to act like I can put those and project those out myself because I'm not in those front offices. I'm not able to get that information for some of these players.
Well, and this is why I love doing these podcasts, right? Because, like I said, the scouting report was the same. Different people value different things.
Yep.
Right. I didn't want to make it to criticize the other, 3 or 4 or 5 draft professors that covered them or anything. This is just for, in some cases, for you guys to know. Also, I think you guys are going to come out being the Akeem Mesidor fan club.
Listen, if we're going to finally be the show, if this is going to be our show guy, I'm glad with this being our show guy.
Hell yeah, I'd take that.
Okay, so the last player we're covering today is Joshua Josephs from Tennessee. He's an edge, 6'3", 240 pounds. Owen, tell me why he's an edge and not an outside linebacker with that frame.
Okay, that's going to be a bit of a tough ask. I mean, it's probably just because Tennessee loves these guys on the edge. You look at James Pierce last year. I think he was almost the same. Maybe he was 6'5", 245, I think, was like his measurables. But they love these lean, long guys. He rushes like a basketball player, where like he doesn't really have all like the hands where he's going to take you on and stack you and then make a move off of it. He's going to attack you outside. You overstep to the outside. He's going to Euro step back inside. He's going to win with a bunch of speed, twitch, athleticism, shooting those gaps. And I think that's what they really value there at Tennessee. When you're looking at a player like this for a pro projection now, I do think there are teams that have been running these smaller, leaner guys. Like I just brought up James Pierce, who's a first-round pick to the Falcons last year. In addition to the Georgia linebacker that I'm forgetting his name of at the moment, they also drafted in the first round, who's also like a hybrid pass rusher type.
Jalen Walker?
Yep.
Yeah, same thing. 6'3", 245, 250. Like these are going to be an archetype. Will McDonald with the Jets. You have a bunch of players that are going to be this stature that are going to be winning in ways as a pass rusher that you really love. And then you're like, okay, but how the hell does he work as a run defender? Now, he's been primarily used as on the line of scrimmage guy for Tennessee. And it makes me a bit concerned with maybe projecting him to come off the ball and work in more space, which is why I love a player like Cassius Howell so much, who we covered in week 1, because he's already starting to playing as an off-ball linebacker and run defense, especially when you are that size. You got to start making those adjustments. Having him not do that so far in college makes it a bit harder of a projection. But I do think if you're a team that values just speed off the edge, especially like a 3-4 outside linebacker team where you're going to put them in more space and you have like a 5-tech head up on the tackles, you're giving him more space to work with as the edge. I do think he could project to the end more so, but I do agree that he does have that frame and profile to bring up some concerns as a run defender, especially along the line of scrimmage.
Yeah, and Owen, how high do you have Joseph's graded?
So I brought up James Pierce not only to say that I comp him because he's from Tennessee and because he has the same kind of height, weight, build. It's also because I was relatively lower on James Pierce than even the NFL was apparently going in the first round last year. So I had Pierce as a round 2 guy last year. And I'm even a little bit lower on Joshua Joseph than that. I'm still in day 2 just because he has that twitch and that explosiveness and he shows up as a pass rusher against SEC competition. But like I said, I'm a bit hesitant to project him as a line of scrimmage player. I also was low on Will McDonald. All those players besides Jalen Walker I mentioned, I was lower on than probably anybody else and the NFL was. So while saying all that, I am still skeptical with him being an even front or a line of scrimmage player. So I am on a day 2 pick with him just because he has such upside with juice as a pass rusher.
So, Newt, where are you?
So for me, actually, I got done with my initial eval. I watched the Georgia game and the Bama game, and I mean, like, truth be told, I really was not all that impressed by Joshua Josephs. I think that there were a lot of things that were working against him in terms of his play strength. And I think it goes back to his ability to play in the line, his ability to be a, run defender at that position. And honestly, the ability for him to have some good explosion off the line. I reached out to Sam Teets, and I know that he had for summer scouting a little bit lower grade on him. I was like, hey, can I get your thoughts on him? And he was a lot higher on him based on his play this year. That was a summer scouting grade that he had on him. So I went back and I watched him against Arkansas, and I saw maybe a couple more of the things that Sam was talking about. I think the explosion, maybe I had a little bit of a fogged view on a couple plays. I did like his explosion off the line. I liked his ability to be an athlete and win as a pass rusher. I think he's got great change of direction. He is quick and he's balanced in terms of his ability to rush with both speed and finesse. And I just don't know where he fits. And he is kind of that in-betweener. And for me, I'm lower than Owen. I've got a day 3 grade on Joshua Josephs because I don't think that he gives me what I want to see for a run defender in terms of a edge player. And I don't think he's that twitched up where, like, I'm willing to say, okay, that's fine. Like, just be my DPR. I think he needs to do a little bit more than that. So I think he's kind of caught in this in between. I don't think that my evaluation of him is necessarily the best in terms of, hey, like, where's your level of play right now in terms of like a football player? I think I'm having a tough time. Like, you kind of phrased it, Jim, in terms of like, hey, are you an outside linebacker and being able to do those two things versus if you're coming in and you're drafted as an edge rusher and I'm trying to get you in a 3-4 system as an outside linebacker that is basically going to be rushing the passer, I really don't like you that much because I think you're limiting. But I think that's the best system that you can end up in because there's no way that I'm going to draft you as an even down line. As an even line. Yeah, as an even line edge rusher. Maybe that's where you kind of see him as that outside linebacker. And I think that you almost have to see him there because I think there's a lot that he leaves on the table. So for me, Joshua Josephs right now, I got him behind Clev Lubin. I've got him behind Gabe Akis. I think he's got to do a lot more in order to prove himself and set himself apart in terms of his ability to be a true pass rusher.
So, Owen, I'm curious. I know you probably didn't scout Aaron Maben, but as I'm listening to you and Newt, Joshua Joseph's Aaron Maben, is there any similarity?
So that was a bit before my time, Jim. I know that was what was it, 2000? What year?
That was a Marv Levy GM pick. So yeah, I know that was a while back. So Newt, do you know who Aaron Maben is?
I do not know. The name does not ring a bell.
He was
one of the biggest draft busts of all time.
Yeah, big draft bust for Buffalo. He was a Penn State edge, but to me, everything you said about Josephs, I had Aaron Maben pictured in my head. So
2009 11th overall pick. For Joseph, I think I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt on a lot of stuff. I had the same kind of concerns. Again, going back to the James Pierce thing, again, not trying to helmet scout for Tennessee, but another thing I saw was like he's like this lanky speed rusher type player, but his ability to corner and bend, especially at that weight, you want him to really like be kind of this Von Miller-esque like bend at the hips. You're sacrificing that weight for a reason, and he doesn't really do that as much. But he has enough speed against these lesser athletes at offensive tackle in college that I'm like, okay. And then his real bread and butter is going to that inside step move after he sets that up. So I do think he has athleticism there. A team that will utilize him like that and will probably have a 3-4 outside linebacker role for him, similar to James Pierce, similar to Jalen Walker. Like I said, if the Falcons didn't double up on first-round picks this year, this would be a guy I think they would be targeting a lot of in this upcoming class. It's just more so, can you round that out a bit more? And is there enough of a market for that style of player that he gets that bump when it comes to the actual draft and how high he can actually go.
Okay. So we've covered the edges for today, or I should say the defensive lineman for today. So next week should be a really good week. David Bailey from Texas Tech, Daryl Jackson from Florida State, Danny Dennis Sutton from Penn State, Aaron Hall from Duke, Skylar Gill Howard from Texas Tech, Cameron Ball from Arkansas, Lee Hunter from Texas Tech, and Albert Regis from Texas A&M. Owen, do you want to let everybody know about the weekly huddle and all the other fun things that you do when you're not a draft professor?
Yeah, so, well, to get the draft professor stuff out of the way, I'm here every Wednesday and then also Tuesday. If you're not tired of hearing my voice at the end of this night, you can also catch me on Tuesdays as well, covering offensive line with former NFL offensive lineman Jerry Ostrowski at the 9 o'clock slot as well. So that is my draft professor side of it. But yeah, over at the Weekly Huddle, we're doing a bunch of different videos. I just posted one breaking down my kind of thoughts and opinions on the Buffalo Bills and their whole philosophy of their wide receiver room and kind of how I personally feel about it. I have another video coming up soon about a player that I don't know if we're going to cover him on this podcast in the next few weeks, but an edge rusher from a MAC school, of course. And I'm pretty much the highest you'll find on him on. But in general, once the winter kind of rolls around, I'm wrapping up some of my first round of student teaching type stuff. So I'm kind of busy right now. But as soon as that winter rolls around, I'll be putting out a lot more videos, doing some live scouting stuff, and getting some more other draft professors back on and start talking about stuff as we ramp up to the All-Star circuit and, true prime draft season when all the games have been played. And it's time to just evaluate guys and watch the Underwear Olympics.
That's awesome. Honestly, you can just find me on the app formerly known as Twitter, at NFL Draft _Weston. I've been cutting up a ton of clips of the guys that we've been watching and talking about. So if you're looking to get a preview of my thoughts on them or just some eyes on some eye-popping plays from those guys, check me out on there. Trying to find a little bit of good for all of these guys. Some guys it's easier than others, but it's been really nice to kind of get some of those clips out early and often. I also run zerocheckdraft.com. Haven't been posting in there as much just because I have, like I said at the beginning of the show, been tied up with other obligations, like a state soccer title run, which has been phenomenal. But looking to get back to that and getting some content posted on there. But the best place you can find me and my thoughts is right here Wednesdays on the Draft Professor and Mrs. Irrelevant podcast, talking about the big hog-tamales on the defensive line.
So, Newt, when you posted the photo from whatever soccer game that was, you guys looked cold.
Yeah, it was not warm. That's for sure.
Yeah. Like, Newt's coaching outdoor soccer in Wisconsin in November. I mean, I remember playing, I played high school soccer in Western New York, and I remember it snowing for a game, and it was before Halloween.
Oh, yeah.
So,
you'll get that.
Yeah.
No, our game before that, we were actually north of Green Bay. 7 o'clock at night in Pulaski, Wisconsin. And that was one where we were all, by the end of it, like, that was a sectional semifinal. So it's like, okay, whatever, we got the win, move on. That wood was cold, being, north of Green Bay and everything. Not the most pleasant of conditions.
Yeah. So more power to you for being able to podcast while you're still coaching. I know that we talked about, like, when could you start podcasting relative to the soccer schedule? So that's appreciated. So if you have a chance, and you can go to @NFL Draft Fanatic. No, I am Fanatic. Give a follow on Twitter. You'll see the podcast schedule, including the players that we're covering. If you go on YouTube to Draft Professor or @NFL Draft Fanatic, you will get daily podcasts, 7 p.m., 9 p.m. Eastern, every weeknight. We have one show on Saturday morning. We have 2 shows on Sunday morning. We're here covering the draft. right now in the months of November and December, the podcasts are going to be really similar to this. We're picking a position group and we're breaking down what we think of the players. So to the best of my knowledge, Newt and Owen did not compare notes on Akeem Mesidor prior to the podcast. But that was funny because Newt was saying, I'm going to be really high on Mesidor. Owen went, and turns out that they were both equally high. So this is the fun time of year to start learning who likes which players. I can already tell from the Draft Professor chat that you guys are higher on Mesidor than a couple of the people that respond in the chat, which would include Anthony Russo right here, as well as a couple of others. So for Newt, Owen, myself, for the 109 people at the Draft Professor, thank you so much for tuning in, everybody, and we will see you on a podcast again tomorrow.